Haribol, and welcome again. My name is Janapati Das, and we are continuing with our reading of the Krishna book. Please accept my respects, and let me offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual teacher and my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who was the spiritual master of my spiritual master, and of course, so wonderfully translated and purported the Srimad Bhagavatam, of which we are reading of the 10th canto. So we are going to get right into the most important aspect of meditation, which is the hearing and chanting of God's holy names, which is the prime benediction for everyone. So please join along. Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Amsavati Namine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Amsavati Namine Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gauranga Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Welcome again, and we are going to get right into our reading. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we had just left off with the story of the demons of Nalakuvara. I'm sorry, I was jumping back in the I did have an important point I wanted to bring up. I was listening to a lecture from another god brother of mine today, and he was bringing up the point of the different modes of material nature, and how when one is heavily into intoxicants and getting drunk and being drugged out all the time, if someone happens to cultivate that kind of consciousness, one is in the mode of ignorance, and therefore they can very likely become trees in their next life, because trees are in the mode of ignorance. And so I found that very interesting, because that was the form that Narada Muni had given of the two brothers of Kuvera. So in our last story, we noticed the two demons that were trying to attack the residents of Vrindavan. Agashora, who came in the form, these Rakshasas, the demons, they can shift their shapes all the time. And I was saying that this is a very common thing. People can do these kinds of mystical powers, can have these kinds of mystical powers. Even when, as a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa, I used to hear stories about different kinds of witch doctors in the rural jungles and swamps and stuff that would change their shapes to snakes, which is what we're coming to about with the Agashora demon. But in this other case, the one demon changed the shape to a shape of a cow, so that he would try to slip in there. But Balaram and Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knew right away what was going on, and took that cow and threw it by its tail. And then, of course, the other demon that came in the form of a bird, Bakashura, tried to swallow Krishna, but had to throw him up because Krishna's illumination was burning him up inside. And then he tried to snap him and so many things, and Krishna just grabbed his beaks and bifurcated. And of course, there was a great celebration by the demigods, throwing flowers from the heaven and playing the drums and bugles, and wonderful, and everybody was happy, and they all embraced Krishna, and in this way they engaged in the pastimes of Krishna lovingly. The residents of Vrindavan, of Rajabhumi, are very immersed in Krishna. As we were bringing up this point last time, the idea of Krishna consciousness, of becoming immersed in Krishna. And there's another great saint, and there's lots of stories of great saints who were immersed in Krishna consciousness, immersed in meditating on Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But one very notable story is the King Ambarisha. And King Ambarisha had actually, because although he was a king, he immersed all the senses in different kinds of activities that made him always thinking of Krishna. And he wasn't attached to the fact that he had so much wealth or that he had a beautiful wife and children. He wasn't attached to those things. He was just going through his service as a king in the service of the Supreme Lord. So this chapter is called The Killing of the Agashora Demon. Once the Lord desired to go early in the morning with all his cowherd boyfriends to the forest, where they were to assemble together and take lunch. As soon as he got up from bed, he blew a buffalo horn and called all his friends together. Keeping the calves before them, they started for the forest. In this way, Lord Krishna assembled thousands of his boyfriends. They were each equipped with a stick, flute, and horn, as well as lunch bag, and each of them was taking care of thousands of calves. All the boys appeared very jolly and happy in that excursion. Each and every one of them was attentive for his personal calves. The boys were fully decorated with various kinds of golden ornaments, and out of sporting propensities they began to pick up flowers, leaves, twigs, peacock feathers, and red clay from different places in the forest. And they began to dress themselves in different ways. While passing through the forest, one boy stole another boy's lunch package and passed it to a third. And when the boy whose lunch package was stolen came to know of it, he tried to take it back, but one threw it to another boy. The sportive playing went on amongst the boys as childhood pastimes. So, getting into these pastimes, as we were saying before, boys, they have all these activities that they love to play with each other, and they love to climb trees or dig holes in the dirt or play role-playing games or dress up and pretend like they're warriors or so many different things, get on their bicycles and or whatever, go out and play. And this is I guess unfortunately more and more becoming sort of with the invent of phones and video games and whatnot, people are stuck to their computers and their gadgets, and so maybe they don't go out as much. But when I was a child, this was definitely something that was done, and for my own children, that's what I've encouraged for them to do. And but in a lot of situations when you're in a school playing and they're stealing people's lunches and you're throwing them among, that's a really then they discipline you for doing that kind of thing because the boy starts crying or something. But in this case, they all were having fun with it. They loved the fact that, oh, I'm going to steal your lunch, I'm going to throw it, and they're going to throw it, now here you go, no, and they throw it. And so in this way, because it's a transcendental activity, they're all engaging, and it's all centered around it being with Krishna and Balaram. It's all very joyous and very wonderful. When Lord Krishna went ahead to a distant place in order to see some specific scenery, the boys behind him tried to run to catch up to be the first one to touch him. Oh, I'll touch him. It's like red light, green light. So there was a great competition. One would say, I will go there and touch Krishna. And another would say, oh, you cannot go. I'll touch Krishna first. Some of them played on their flutes or vibrated bugles made of buffalo horn. Some of them gladly followed the peacocks and imitated the onomatopoetic, what a word, Nishi Bhaktivedanta Swami. English was his second language, but he uses words that even I don't know. It's so intelligent. Imitated the onomatopoetic sounds of the cuckoo. While the birds were flying in the sky, the boys ran after the birds' shadows along the ground and tried to follow their exact courses. Some of them went to the monkeys and silently sat down by them. Some of them imitated the dancing of the peacocks. Some of them caught the tails of the monkeys and played with them. And when the monkeys jumped in a tree, the boys also followed. When a monkey showed its face and teeth, a boy imitated and showed his teeth to the monkey. Some of the boys played with the frogs on the bank of the Jamuna, and when out of fear the frogs jumped in the water, the boys immediately dove in after them. I guess that's the onomatopoetic sound of a bird out there. And they would come out of the water when they saw their own shadows and stand, imitating, making caricatures and laughing. Like they would be jumping around probably. They would also go to an empty well and make loud sounds, and when the echo came back, they would call it ill names and laugh. As stated personally by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita, he is realized proportionately by transcendentalists as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we had, I think, touched on in a previous video about the three forms of God realization. God appears in three forms. He is one, but he has different expansions and incarnations. In other words, the lowest form of God realization is known as Brahman realization, or Brahman, or the Brahma Jyoti, which is an energy effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead of Krishna. It is the effulgence of all the living entities. And then the Paramatma, which is the expansion of Krishna within the heart of all living entities. and of course as Bhagavan, as the supreme form, the supreme personality of Godhead. Here in the confirmation of the last statement, Lord Krishna, who awards the impersonalist Brahman realization by his bodily effulgence, also gives pleasure to the devotees as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are under the spell of the external energy, Maya, take him only as a beautiful child. Yet he gave full transcendental pleasure to the cowherd boys who played with him. Only after accumulating heaps of pious activities, those boys were promoted to personally associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who can estimate the transcendental fortune of the residents of Vrindavan? They were personally visualizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he whom many yogis cannot find even after undergoing severe austerities, although he is sitting within the heart. This is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. One may search for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the pages of the Vedas and Upanishads, but if one is fortunate enough to associate with a devotee, he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. After accumulating pious activities in many, many previous lives, the cowherd boys were seeing Krishna face to face and playing with him as friends. They could not understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they were playing as intimate friends with intense love for him. So as arranged, they're having a higher form of association with Krishna. You would say, now how is that not knowing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not as high as this sort of relationship that the cowherd boys had through the expansion of the Yoga Maya energy. Because of their desire as devotees, they were having this loving pastime of friendship with Krishna, and it's very wonderful. Because Krishna is not particularly attracted by the awe and reverence that many people give God from a distance. They like, well, I don't really want to have an intimate relationship with God, but I'll worship him from here in my temple, and as long as I don't have to, because they're kind of afraid. They have fear. There's a little bit of fear in the form of God that a lot of people in religions have, but in a higher sense, one can have a loving relationship with Krishna, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and still, at the same time, not be really aware of his lofty presence as the Supreme Lord. When Lord Krishna was enjoying his childhood pastimes with his boyfriends, one Agashora demon became very impatient. He was unable to see Krishna playing, so he appeared before the boys, intending to kill them all. This Agashora was so dangerous that even the denizens of heaven were afraid of him. Although the denizens of heaven drank nectar daily to prolong their lives, they were afraid of this Agashora and were wondering, when will the demon be killed? The denizens used to drink nectar to become immortal, but actually they were not confident of their immortality. On the other hand, the boys who were playing with Krishna had no fear of demons. They were free of fear. There we go. This is a prime example. So the demigods, they're in this sort of state of, they know Lord Narayan, they know Lord Vishnu, they know God as their lofty master, but they don't have that same kind of relationship with. They're a little bit puffed up because they're in positions of power, and the cowherd boys just are whatever, we're going to play with Krishna, jump on him, and they have a much more higher and lofty relationship than even the demigods in heaven do, who are in these extremely powerful positions in the universe. They were free of fear, so they didn't have any fear. There was no awe and reverence by the cowherd boys. They just, yeah, Krishna will protect us. Any material arrangement for protecting oneself from death is always unsure, but if one is in Krishna consciousness, then immortality is confidentially assured. An important point. One who is immersed in Krishna consciousness has no fear, and that's why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, abandon all varieties of religion, of religious awe and reverence, of the rituals, of just anything, and just surrender to me. That is the highest form of just surrender your life to God. And I will give you all protection from sinful reactions. I will give you all protection. Do not fear. Do not fear. He says, do not fear. I will protect you. And so the devotee is completely helpless. So there's so many wonderful stories of devotee, and of course in the stories of the Srimad Bhagavatam, one I think of off the top of my head is Prahlada Maharaja, who was also eventually became a wonderful king. He was born in a family of demons, but he was a devotee of Krishna. His spiritual master was Narada Muni, and he had complete faith and trust in God, even though his father was a great demon, Hiranyakashipu, and was so dangerous and so powerful that even the demigods were afraid of him. That Prahlada, the little 5-year-old boy, was completely helpless, but had complete faith and complete surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he was completely protected through so many things that his father did. But that's another story. If you can read the Srimad Bhagavatam, or even the story in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Prahlada Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu and Lord Nrsingadev, which is the incarnation of Krishna in the form of half man, half lion. Very wonderful story. The demon Agashora appeared before Krishna and his friends. Agashora happened to be the younger brother of Putana and Bakashora. Now, if you remember, Putana, the witch who was trying to feed Krishna and had her life air sucked out, and Bakashora, who came in the form of a bird, Krishna killed both of them. And he thought, Krishna has killed my brother and sister. Now I shall kill him along with his friends and calves. Agashora was instigated by Kamsa, so he had come with determination. Agashora also began to think that he would offer grains and water in the memory of his brother and kill Krishna and all the coward boys. Then automatically all the inhabitants of Vrindavan would die. Generally, for the householders, the children are the life and breath force. When all the children die, then naturally the parents also die on account of strong affection for them. Krishna was the life and is the life and soul of the devotee. So in this way, the people are thinking, because they are life and soul of this, if we kill them, they will have no life and they will just die and wither away. They don't realize that nothing can kill Krishna. Agashora, thus deciding to kill all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, expanded himself by the yogic siddhi called Mahima. So there we were saying there are practices, different practices that yogis can engage in and people can engage in to get mystic powers, which are also considered a subtle material benediction, but therefore people who are deemed demoniac do want to have these powers. And you will see these a lot of times in India and other places where people can do things and do tricks and all kinds of little things like shrink themselves, change their shapes, but it's all on a material level. None of it's spiritual. Agashora, thus deciding to kill all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, expanded himself by the yogic siddhi called Mahima. The demons are generally expert in achieving almost all kinds of mystic powers. In the yoga system, the perfection called Mahima Siddhi, one can expand himself as he desires. The demon Agashora expanded himself up to 8 miles and assumed the shape of a very fat serpent. Having attained this wonderful body, he stretched his mouth open just like a mountain cave. Desiring to swallow all the boys at once, including Krishna and Balaram, he sat on the path. Devotees are not really interested in all this mystic power nonsense because they know it's a temporary thing that you have and it doesn't really bring you any kind of happiness. Devotees are really only interested in engaging in Krishna consciousness because that is the goal of life and that is the ultimate aim. And wasting your time on anything else than that is just a waste of time. Really, it's such a waste of a precious human form of life. The demon, in the shape of a big fat serpent, expanded his lips from land to sky. His lower lip was touching the ground, and his upper lip was touching the clouds. His jaws appeared like a big mountain cave, without limitation, and his teeth appeared just like mountain summits. His tongue appeared to be a broad traffic way, and he was breathing just like a hurricane. The fire of his eyes was blazing. At first, the boys thought that the demon was a statue, but after examining it, they saw that it was more like a big serpent lying down in the road and widening his mouth. The boys began to talk among themselves. This figure appears to be a great animal, and he is sitting in such a posture just to swallow us all. Just see, is it not a big snake that has widened his mouth to eat all of us? It was very high, but they could actually see what it was. One of them said, "Yes, what you say is true. This animal's upper lip appears to be just like sunshine, and its lower lip is just like the reflection of red sunshine on the ground. Dear friends, just look to the right and left-hand side of the mouth of the animal. Its mouth appears to be like a big mountain cave, and its height cannot be estimated. The chin is also raised, just like a mountain summit. That long highway appears to be its tongue, and inside the mouth it is as dark as in a mountain cave. The hot wind that is blowing like a hurricane is his breathing, and the fishy, bad smell coming out of his mouth is the smell of his intestines." Then they further consulted among themselves. "If we all at once entered into the mouth of this great serpent, how could it possibly swallow all of us? And even if it were to swallow all of us at once, it could not swallow Krishna. Krishna will immediately kill him, as he did Agashora." Talking in this way, all the boys looked at the beautiful lotus-eye-like face of Krishna, and they began to clap and smile. And so they marched forward and entered the mouth of the gigantic serpent. So they're just like, let's just go, see what happens. They trust completely in Krishna, and as we will see in many other stories that happen in this book, everyone has faith in Krishna's ability to protect them. Meanwhile, Krishna, who is the super soul within everyone's heart, could understand that the big statuesque figure was a demon. While he was planning how to stop the destruction of his intimate friends, all the boys, along with their cows and calves, entered the mouth of the serpent. But Krishna did not enter. The demon was awaiting Krishna's entrance, and he was thinking, "Everyone has entered except Krishna, who has killed my brothers and sisters." That's my dramatic voice. Krishna is the assurance of safety to everyone, but when he saw that his friends were already out of his hands and were lying within the belly of a great serpent, he became momentarily aggrieved. He was also struck with wonder how the external energy works so wonderfully. He then began to consider how the demon should be killed and how he should save the boys and calves. Although there was no factual concern on Krishna's part, he was thinking like that. Finally, after some deliberation, he also entered the mouth of the demon. When Krishna entered, all the demigods who had gathered to see the fun and who were hiding within the clouds began to express their feelings with words, "Alas, alas!" At the same time, all the friends of Agashora, especially Kamsa, who were accustomed to eating flesh and blood, began to express their jubilation, understanding that Krishna had also entered the mouth of the demon. It's equally, demigods and demons are completely ignorant of the situation. The demigods are like, "Oh no, Krishna's going to get killed." The demons are like, "Oh yes, Krishna's going to get killed." They're like, and the coward boys are just like, "It's no problem. Krishna will protect us all." And Krishna can kill this easy thing, just like flies in a fire. While the demon was trying to smash Krishna and his companions, Krishna heard the demigods crying, "Alas, alas," and he immediately began to expand himself within the throat of the demon. So Krishna is very kind and compassionate. He just cares about people, and oh no, well, my devotees are worried about me. Okay, I guess I'll deal with this. Yet, although he had a gigantic body, the demon choked by the expanding of Krishna. His big eyes moved violently, and he quickly suffocated. His life air could not come out from any source, and ultimately it burst out of a hole in the upper part of his skull. Love to have seen that. Thus his life air passed off. After the demon dropped dead, Krishna, with his transcendental glance alone, brought all the boys and calves back to consciousness and came with them out of the mouth of the demon. While Krishna was within the mouth of Agashora, the demon's spirit soul came out like a dazzling light, illuminating all directions, and waited in the sky. As soon as Krishna, with his calves and friends, came out of the mouth of the demon, that glittering effulgent light immediately merged into the body of Krishna within the vision of all demigods. And we remember that even the demons are devotees of Krishna, actually. They're living entities, they're spirit souls in temporary bodies of demons. And so then when it died in the body of Agashora, it came out and it was there, and then it merged into the body, because all living entities come forth from the body of Krishna. The demigods became overwhelmed with joy and began to shower flowers on the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, and thus they worshipped him. The denizens of heaven began to dance in jubilation, and the denizens of Gandharva Loka began to offer various kinds of prayers. Drummers began to beat drums in jubilation, and the Brahmanas began to recite Vedic hymns, and all the devotees of the Lord began to chant the words, Jaya, Jaya, all glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I think I'm going to stop there, because even though we're halfway through this chapter, we're transitioning to another story. We're going to finish this story about Agashora and transition into the next story, which is coming up a few chapters, and we'll read the couple pages here, and it's called The Stealing of the Boys and Calves by Brahma. So we will finish up this, because Lord Brahma is kind of introduced into this story about Agashora, and then is continued into the next story. So that's very wonderful. It is very wonderful. As usual, the activities of engaging in the Krishna consciousness, or in the service of Krishna, are so multifarious, and it helps one come closer and closer to Krishna, so that one thinks always of Krishna. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And that is the sum bonum essence of spiritual life. And so we're going to chant so that we can remember. Thank you. Singing. avatar. All right. Thank you very much. We will see you next time. Namaste.